This program is brought to you by Emory University.
On January 21st, 2015, the Office of the Provost at Emory University hosted a forum titled The Value of Public Scholarship. The panelists examined the impact of public scholarship on those who practice it and on their institutions. The speakers were Claire Stirk, Provost and Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs at Emory, Andra Gillespie, Associate Professor of Political Science at Emory, Carlos Marino, Associate Professor of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at the Emory School of Medicine, and Megan McRainey, Assistant Director of Media Relations at Emory. In this video, Ms. McRainey describes the abundant resources at Emory to help faculty identify and reach audiences for their public scholarship.
There are a lot of different ways that you can engage in public scholarship with the media specifically, which is my expertise. You don't have to be a media superstar like Andra. There are all different levels that you can come in at. It's all about what you're comfortable with. It has to do with your expertise. It has to do a little bit with your personality. Can you get on CNN and talk for 5 minutes, or would you rather do a quiet interview with a reporter? Any of those is okay, and any of those is helpful. Just depends on you and what you work with. So, one of the main reasons that people, get out there is that they have research that they want to promote to the public. Because when you publish a journal article, some people might see it. Some of your peers might not even see it. I like to tell a story about I used to work at Georgia Tech, and I had a professor I worked with at Georgia Tech had put out this paper in biomedical engineering, and he'd expected to get all this attention for it, and he had gotten very little. And he says, I don't know what happened. And so I was there to write the press release because nothing had happened. And he says, I thought for sure my peers would see this and that it would be a big deal. So I wrote the press release, and about a month and a half had gone past since the journal, and so we put it out there. And he started getting calls immediately. His peers started calling him, and he says, I don't think they were reading the paper. I think they saw it on, Nature's website. I was like, yeah, well, people are more likely to read general media, and that same goes for academics. And people have stacks of papers journal articles that they want to go through at some point when they go on sabbatical or when it's the holidays, and then they don't get a chance. So, it's not just about getting your name out there and being a superstar. It's also about peer review type things too. So the media helps with that too. So one of the the top ones is just get your research out there. So you can do media on just that, research results, no opinion involved, nothing all that scary about that kind of thing, unless it's controversial. But then there are other things like what Andra does a lot of is just sort of getting out there and commenting on current events based on your expertise. And there's a lot of room for that depending on what your area is, and very important issues that really need the voice of someone who is very educated and not just whatever Yahoo wants to get up on TV and run their mouth about it. And so that's very necessary in general. And another option is also softer articles. There are lots of reporters writing feature articles that might love to talk to you about African American cinema, or love to talk to you about French art. You never know, and we get all sorts of calls for things like that. And those are very low pressure interviews and a good way to get out there and share your expertise in a lower pressure way. And then of course there are opinion editorials, and I think that's great. If something really just gets under your skin, or maybe you're witnessing media coverage and you're like, where is this voice? That is not there. Or why is no one talking about this? It's a great opportunity to write up what you think is missing from the conversation as an expert and getting it out there. And it's also extremely valuable. And as other panelists have said, it doesn't take that long, depending on, and heck, 800 words, you can do 500 words or 400 words if you'd like. The shorter the better for most publications, honestly. So that's another option. You don't even have to talk to anyone. You can just write it yourself and be very introverted. So there's a pretty wide spectrum of things that you can do. A lot of the panelists have done a great job of sort of the why should I bother working with media, but I'll give you a few more specific ones. And just like I told the story previously about the faculty member who released the paper and nobody heard about it, number one would be there's a heightened awareness of your work among your peers, not just journal articles. Your peers will also see random news articles and, come to you. There would be people across the country that you may have no contact with who might contact you and say, I read that you're doing that kind of work and I am too. Maybe we should work together on that. I've had many faculty members come back to me and say, wow, I have this really new great research avenue I'm going through because someone called me and he's working on something similar and we're going to work together on it. Another thing that can happen is if you're working on something perhaps you don't have funding for. This has happened, I swear. It's not something that happens every day, but it's a success story to shoot for. I had a faculty member at Georgia Tech who was working on a fuel cell, and he was having trouble getting funding for it, and it was still very experimental stuff, and we did a release on it. And he was contacted by Honda probably 2 or 3 weeks later. And they offered him, they said, we would really love for you to continue that work, and we'd like for you to have the resources to continue that work, and approached him about giving him some funding for that. So those types of things happened. I don't think he had any expectation that would happen. That was sort of a happy surprise. So you never know who might come to you once it's out in the public sphere like that. Another thing, of course, is the public scholarship part in terms of awareness of the issue is also incredibly important. I mean, again, a journal article is one thing, your peers seeing it is one thing. The general public calling attention to an issue, calling attention to something that you found out is incredibly important. And the best way to do that is to go to the media. I mean, it gets wide coverage. All sorts of people see it, all sorts of influencers, policymakers. You never know who's going to see it and react to it. So it's obviously very important. And of course, there's your personal brand. I mean, if you're getting out there and your peers and people at other institutions and people in conferences see that your work, you might get invited to talks that you may not have otherwise, partnerships, funding, you name it. It's a lot of opportunities can come from just one article. And I would say another one, of course, is strengthening Emory's brand as well. It's incredibly important to Emory itself that our faculty be out there showing that they are world, international, national, local leaders in these issues and doing this kind of important work. I mean, it leads to increased support from the community in general. And of course, if there's an article on something and then they go to an Emory expert, it's like, okay, Emory has experts in this. The Emory is a place where the top experts are. So that's also just keeping Emory's reputation the way it is incredibly important. So here's the basics of working with the media relations team here at Emory. There's a representative for each of the areas, and so I'm not your representative, no matter what, but we have a lot of great professionals who've been doing this for many, many years and know what they're doing. I'm the representative for sciences and social sciences. Lane, who's sitting over there, is representative for law and religion and several other things. The best way to, if you don't, and of course if you're in health sciences has their own unit. So if you're in medicine or one of those areas, they have their own unit. But if you go to our News Center site and the for press part, you can use what the press used to figure out which of us to go to figure out which of us to come to if you have something that you want to get out there in the media or comment on or research or whatever the case may be. It'll help guide you to the right person. But once you contact us, we can meet with you. If you've never done press before, if you've done very little press and want to get yourself out there more, we can meet with you about what your expertise area is, what your comfort levels are, what we can do to help get you out there. If you need media training, if you don't have a lot of media experience, we can certainly help you with that, give you tips for how to prepare for interviews and get your comfort level up, because I really feel like that's the most important thing that you can do is just get very comfortable with being able to do interviews. To feel prepared and confident going in makes all the difference in the world. So we can work with everybody on that. We can also help you determine how newsworthy, I guess, your area is and what you're working on. Like everybody else here, we have a lot to do and we have a lot of faculty to cover, so we can't, pick up every story, but we really want to hear about every story. And if we can't take it on our office specifically, we can give you advice on how you might be able to promote it yourself or who you might be able to go to. So don't be bashful about coming to us and asking. We don't mind giving advice on those, even if we can't take it on as a full-blown media campaign. And then past that, once we've met and talked about what we're going to do, it's definitely helpful if faculty stay in touch with us about whether they have a paper coming up. It's good to know ahead of time and not the day it comes out, because a lot goes into preparing for those sorts of things, making talking points, making videos, making graphics, really getting ready takes a little bit of time, so it's good to know that right away. And we're also looking for stories about all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be about research or an op-ed. We're also looking for cool student stories or cool courses and all sorts of things. So we're pretty open to hear about all sorts of things, and you never know what might get media pickup. It's, you never can tell. So that's our job. We're happy to help you figure that out, and you can come to us and we'll help you out with that. And then I guess my last caution would be something that's come up recently that has to do with public scholarship. And that is that when you put research out there in the form of a paper or a working paper, it sort of becomes public. And I also encourage you that if you have something that you think is controversial or might get a lot of attention ahead of time, please come to us and let us help you prepare for it. That would be fantastic. We've had professors put up papers just on a working paper on a website that's gotten picked up by bloggers and gotten mass media from there that they didn't anticipate, and so they're getting reporter calls all of a sudden. So if you have something that you think that might fall into that category, feel free to come to us and we will help you prepare for it ahead of time. Even if the journal article's not out, even if you're not ready, once something's out there in the public sphere, if you've done a conference talk on it, you've posted a working paper, it's out there in the public sphere from that point. So we can help provide advice on that too ahead of time.
The preceding program is copyrighted by Emory University.